Trey Lance's season is over, and what the hell is this Bears passing game? I'm Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Tuesday, September 20th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Starting at quarterback for the rest of the season is San Francisco's Jimmy Garoppolo because Trey Lance is injured. Quite simply, I feel awful for Lance. His second NFL season is over before it even started after suffering a season-ending ankle injury early in week 2. Now, Lance underwent surgery on Monday to repair his fractured and dislocated ankle, but NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reported that he at least avoided a compound fracture like Dak Prescott's severe injury back in 2020. Now, Lance has completed just 20 starts since the start of his sophomore season at North Dakota State in 2019. Yikes. And he'll have a long recovery from his catastrophic leg injury. Now, Lance will remain the favorite to open as the 49ers starter in 2023, at least for now, but he's not guaranteed to be the guy depending on how he recovers and depending on what happens the rest of the season for the 49ers. And those 49ers could be really good again. Remember, this is a team that went to the NFC Championship game last year and was a dropped interception away from playing the Bengals in the Super Bowl. The quarterback of that team, of course, was Jimmy Garoppolo. And say what you want about Jim G, but he's won a lot of football games. Now, after Lance went down, he came in and completed 13 of 21 passes for 154 yards with a touchdown and an interception against the Seahawks. Now, remember, this is a guy who didn't practice all training camp because they were looking to trade him. So he's pretty cold for a guy who at least knows the offense. Now, San Francisco's rushing attack may not be as potent as it was last season for as long as Elijah Mitchell and Tyrion Davis-Price are out of the lineup, which means Jimmy G in the passing game could do a little more heavy lifting. Lance may have eventually boosted the values of guys like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, but that was far from a guarantee. And Garoppolo will give this passing attack an immediate upgrade. In our first running back spot, we have a hammer running back one for fantasy. Chasing narratives for fantasy and betting is typically a futile exercise, but one that's had a lot of success in recent years, at least it seems to me, is the squeaky wheel narrative. You know, the old saying, grease the squeaky wheel, especially when it comes to guys who are proven players who got underutilized in a recent game. There were a couple of examples of that in week 2. Allen Robinson and Devontae Smith come to mind, but none were bigger than the Packers' Aaron Jones, who had just 8 touches in the Packers' week 1 blowout loss to the Vikings before absolutely dominating the Bears on Sunday night. Now, here's what Coach Matt LaFleur had to say about Jones after the Vikings game. Quote, "Anytime Aaron Jones comes out of a game with 8 touches, that's not good enough." So LaFleur did what good coaches do, and he gave him the ball the next game. Against Chicago, Aaron Jones posted 15 carries for 132 yards and a touchdown, and 3 catches for 38 yards and a touchdown, despite actually playing a lower snap share at 59% than he did in week 1 at 61%. So LaFleur stuck to his word, and good things happened. Jones is one of the most efficient backs in football and likely will be the best player on this offense, not named Aaron Rodgers, for most of the season. Now, it's good to see that he still has that slate-breaking upside that we've come to adore. He was a second-round pick all summer because of fears about his role and the rotation with A.J. Dillon, and that was fair. We saw why many of those people who were fading him in round 1 had those fears in week 1. And we saw why he was a good pick at his second-round ADP in week 2. Yet another coach stuck to his word with the player in our second running back spot. Hey, look, Lovie Smith, it's never too late to admit you're wrong. Nobody's right 100% of the time. And as long as you admit you're wrong and you change your ways, we're cool. We're cool. We're cool. And now after rookie Dameon Pierce's shocking debut, in which he operated as the clear number 2 back behind Rex Burkhead, despite the Texans being either ahead or in a competitive game with the Colts for the entire way, Lovey said things would change. Quote, "We need to get Dameon more touches. That's what we need to do," he said. And things did change. In week 2 against the Broncos, Pierce played 62% of the snaps, up from 29% in week 1, and posted 15 carries for 69 yards rushing and 1 catch for 8 yards receiving on his lone target. Now, those numbers were up from 11 carries for 33 yards in week 1 and 1 catch for 6 yards. Now, meanwhile, Rex Burkhead's snap share fell from 71% to 37%, and he didn't receive a single carry in week 2. The Texans are 0-1-1, but they were competitive for the second consecutive week against a perceived far superior opponent. They have a winnable game in Chicago this coming Sunday, and Pierce will be a viable running back too. In our first wide receiver spot, we won't have Mike Evans this week. The NFL suspended Evans 1 game for his role in a physical altercation with his arch nemesis, cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, in their week 2 victory against the Saints. Now, Evans is appealing the ruling, but the Buccaneers wide receiver core could be as thin as their opponent's wide receiver core this coming week against the Packers, with Chris Godwin already likely to miss and Julio Jones also up in the air for the showdown. The Bucs are so desperate that they signed Cole Beasley to their practice squad on Tuesday morning. Now, Tom Brady and the boys are 2-0, so they have some cushion, but this offense has really struggled through 2 games with problems at receiver and on the offensive line. At our other wide receiver spot, we have a locked-in wide receiver 1. On Sunday, during the Lions' win over the Commanders, I tweeted from @FG_Dolan, by the way, simply, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a star. Now, some poor sap responded to me that St. Brown was on his bench. I asked him why. He said he needed to get Darrell Henderson in his flex. So, of course, he had to bench St. Brown. No, you don't. You do not, under any circumstances, gotta bench St. Brown for Darrell Henderson or anyone. That guy should subscribe to fantasypoints.com, by the way. Now, St. Brown is quickly proving any remaining doubters wrong with his torrid play from the end of 2021 stretching into the start of 2022. He posted another ho-hum 9-catch, 116-yard, 2-touchdown performance on 12 targets against the Commanders in week 2, and he added a team-best 68 rushing yards for the cherry on top of his 39.4 PPR fantasy point performance. St. Brown has now posted 8 or more catches and 20 or more fantasy points in 8 straight games dating back to last season, and he scored in 7 of those contests with 9 overall touchdowns over the span. 8 straight games with 8 or more catches, by the way, ties the NFL record with Michael Thomas and Antonio Brown. And he's got a shot to break that in week 3 against the Vikings. As for me, I'm just kicking myself that I didn't draft St. Brown more because his 5th round ADP is looking absolutely stupid right now. Now, in our flex spot, we'd rather have Darrell Henderson than the Bears pass catchers. Now, giving Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, Justin Fields, and the Bears passing game a break for week 1, given the awful conditions that they played in, was the right thing to do. Giving them one for whatever that was on Sunday night was not. Darnell Mooney caught one of his 2 targets for a loss of 4 yards on Sunday night against the Packers. Now, we'd normally say that's a massive indictment of Mooney, given that he caught just 1 pass for 8 yards in the opener. So he has 2 catches for 4 yards so far this season. But here's the thing. The Bears don't want Justin Fields to throw the football. Mooney has a 17.9% target share, which isn't massive, but it's certainly good enough to produce for fantasy. It just isn't enough when the quarterback is throwing 11 passes in a game in which the Bears were down multiple scores for 70% of the contest. As for Kmet, he has been targeted on 2 of Justin Fields' 28 pass attempts this year. He has caught neither of them. That basically sums it up. He's playing a massive snap share above 85% in both games and is running routes on a high percentage of Fields' dropbacks. But there aren't enough of those dropbacks for anyone to produce. This is a disaster right now. Kmet is droppable after back-to-back goose eggs, and Mooney has to be on fantasy benches until further notice. Fields has just 15 completions in 2 games. Those numbers are Tebow-esque. I'm Joe Dolan, and this has been the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. Remember to like this video. Just, hit that thumbs up. Comment on the video. That really helps. And subscribe to the Fantasy Points channel for the Daily Lineup and all of our videos. And as the injuries and the news piles up, you need to adjust your fantasy roster. That's where fantasypoints.com comes in. If you're looking for the best waiver trade, start-sit advice, your standard package will do. But if you're a DFS guy, like to bet against the spread, prop bets, you'll want our premium package. But both packages give you access to our subscriber Discord with a direct line to our staff and a growing community of fantasy lovers. Now, whatever you choose, use code LINEUP22 for an extra 10% off any package. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning, everyone.